Welcome to part 2 of the Fashion Forecasting e-course. Today we will be looking at PESTEL, an introduction to PESTEL analysis and looking at the macro and micro marketing environments. Last week we familiarised ourselves with this diagram, looking at the journey and cycle of a fashion forecaster and how businesses use trend forecasting. After last week's lesson, we should have all looked at doing research into our partners and competitors, looking at what their main trends have been and trying to identify trends across them. When you have trend forecasting, you'd be constantly doing this, along with the fashion scan, hopefully travelling to fashion capitals or trend spots, or for freelance designers or for smaller brands, you might be doing a lot of this online, looking at broadcasting and print and various online sources that are at hand, and networking with other creatives, whether that be viewing people on Instagram that are inspirational, or looking at different people's blogs. This week we will be looking at cultural indicators, conducting our very own PESTEL analysis and looking at mega trends, basically looking at the bigger picture and looking at what we call the macro marketing environment. We will also go on in the future to do a consumer scan. And again, all of this combined helps us to go on to predict trends and come up with a trend analysis. So what is a PESTEL analysis? A PESTEL analysis is a framework used to scan a business's external macro environment. The letters stand for political, economic, social, cultural, technological, legal and environmental. The principle is that we identify the key factors from the wider, uncontrollable external environment that might affect a business or organisation. In trend forecasting, we refer a lot to the macro and micro marketing environments. So let's take a quick look at these in more detail. The macro-environmental environment factors include political, economic, social, technological, environmental and cultural and legal influences. These are often referred to as PESTEL factors and are researched in a PESTEL analysis, which is what we will be looking at today. The organisation or business cannot control these forces. It can only prepare for changes taking place by identifying these within a PESTEL analysis. The micro-marketing environment refers to forces closely influencing the company and directly affecting the organisation's relationships. These factors include the company and its competitors, customers, as well as the general public. So just to summarise, the macro environment is where we do not have control, we can only prepare for it or adjust to it. And the micro environment is where we do have control and we can take measures. So overall, the PESTEL analysis is of the macro environment where we do not have control, but we can make preparations for. So let's take a look at each one of these topics in a little bit more detail, starting obviously with political forces. Political factors refer to the stability of the political environment and the attitudes of political parties or movements surrounding us. This may manifest in government influences on tax policies or government involvement in trading agreements. Just think of all the current EU influences there are in the UK since we've made the decision to leave the EU. Political factors are inevitably entwined with legal factors, such as national employment laws, international trade regulations and restrictions, monopolies and mergers rules, and consumer protection. The differences between political and legal factors is that political refers to attitudes and approaches, whereas legal factors are those which have become law and regulation. Legal needs to be complied with, whereas political may represent influences, restrictions or opportunities, but they are not mandatory. Economic factors. Economic factors represent the wider economy and may include economic growth rates, level of employment and unemployment, cost of raw materials such as energy, petrol and steel, which also have a huge impact on the fashion industry, especially when we're looking at the cost of production. Interest rates and monetary policies, exchange rate and inflation rates, again having a massive effect upon manufacturing and importing and exporting of goods. These may also vary from one country to another. Social cultural factors. Social cultural factors represent the culture of a society that an organisation or business operates within. They may include demographics, age distribution, population growth rates, levels of education, distribution of wealth and social classes, and living conditions and lifestyles. Massive migration are changing the ways we experience national identities and cultural belongings right now. Managing differences is becoming one of the greatest challenges to multicultural countries. Technological factors. Technological factors refer to the rate of new inventions and development, for example, changes in information and mobile technology, changes in internet and e-commerce or even mobile commerce. These are having huge factors on the retail industry at the moment, and massive retail trends are emerging with e-commerce and mobile commerce, as you've probably seen as a consumer as well. Government spending on research. There is often in technology a tendency to focus technological developments on digital and internet related areas, but it should also include material development, again hugely important for the fashion industry, new methods of manufacture, again massively important, as well as distribution and logistics. Environmental impacts. Environmental impacts can include issues such as limited natural resources, waste disposal and recycling procedures. Again, environmental issues and ethical fashion is a huge focus at the moment and something we should all be taking into consideration within the industry. Legal factors. Legal factors include issues such as national employment laws, international trade regulations and restrictions, monopolies and mergers rules, and consumer protection. Again, as we capped on earlier, the difference between political and legal factors is that political refers to attitudes and approaches, whereas legal factors are those that become law and regulations. Legal needs to be complied with, whereas political may represent influences, restrictions, or opportunities, but they are not mandatory as of yet, at least. Additional considerations. PESTEL is constantly changing, just like society. In fact, it used to just be called a PEST analysis before environmental and legal got added onto the end form PESTEL. A new force which is gaining importance is ethics, and you've probably noticed this as a consumer or just reading the news likewise. These can be defined by the set of moral principles and values that govern the actions and decisions of an individual or a group. Ethics and morals serve as guidelines on how we act rightly and justified when individuals are faced with moral dilemmas. This force could include corporate social responsibility, fair trade, affiliation between corporations and charities. A particular problem may exist with how ethical factors relate to legal forces, as they may be at different stages in development. Something may be ethical but not protected by law, for example, whereas other activities may not be ethical but are legal. In the UK, we have a TV programme called Have I Got News For You, which I know is broadcast throughout different countries worldwide as well. If you're not familiar with it, it's a game that's played where you guess the top 5 or 10 news stories in a week. We're going to change this slightly, and I've come up with a game, Have I Got Some PESTEL For You, to get you into the frame of mind for thinking along these lines. First of all, what do you think are some of the most talked about political factors discussed in the past 12 months? Press pause now if you want to take a while to just think about them. Some of the ones that I have identified are Trump becoming president of the USA. I know this is an international news story because it has an effect upon basically everybody in the world. The UK votes to leave the EU. And the UK snap election chaos. UK Prime Minister Theresa May has called a snap general election for the 8th of June, taking the country by surprise. We're now seeing the effects of these. Next up, what are some of the most talked about economic impacts discussed over the 12 months, do you think? First up, public sector pay. The TUC says wages are down thousands since 2010. In the UK, after the recession that we had in 2009, which has very much impacted throughout the world, public sector pay was put on freeze, and now a few years later, well actually getting on for 10 years later, people's wages still haven't risen. Weak pounds see surges in tourism visiting the UK. The weakness of the sterling was behind a surge in the number of tourists visiting the UK in the first 3 months of 2017, according to the Office for National Statistics. This has also had a huge impact on retail, as these visitors are spending a huge amount on fashion within the UK. So again, a massive impact again within the fashion industry. Brexit. UK investment uncertainty. Businesses are holding off from investing in the UK because of uncertainty about Brexit and the future of our economy. What were the most social cultural factors talked about in the past 12 months? Wealth and poverty sit side by side in Grenfell Tower's borough. Data shows areas around Grenfell Tower were among the top 10% most deprived areas within England in 2015. Rural America showed deep cultural divide with urban centres. The political divide between rural and urban America is more cultural than it is economic. Rooted in rural residents' deep misgivings about the national's rapidly changing demographics, their sense that Christianity is under siege, and their perception that the federal government caters most to the needs of people in big cities, according to a wide-ranging poll that examines cultural attitudes towards the United States. Similar scenarios are reflecting across the UK and as well as Europe, and again worldwide. These are having a huge impact on the direction of fashion too. So when researching news stories surrounding these kind of subjects, look into them. How will they think about how they will impact your consumer profile and your business? Don't call us silver. Pensioners are underrated and underserved market. Again, the population in general worldwide is that we've got a huge ageing population. There's much more people over 65 than there are in younger demographics. And this again has a huge impact upon society and spending, as well as again looking at different markets and consumer profiles. We need to cater for these industries, for these consumers as well. What are some of the most talked about technological factors discussed in the past 12 months? Smart vending machines could sell alcohol and ammunition. A vending machine fitted with biometric security has been developed, which could be used to dispense a variety of restricted goods, including alcohol, ammunition, and cannabis. Inside the cyber attack on Parliament. The attack, which led to officials disabled remote access to thousands of email accounts of MPs, peers, and their staff, was first spotted at Parliament's Security Operations Centre. Cyber attacks have been in the news throughout the year. There's been another one on the NHS, as well as other various ones, something that again is going to be a huge impact within our future. Emojis honoured in world celebration. New York's Empire State Building will be lit up in yellow to mark a day that organisers hope will put a smile on millions of faces. It is one of several stunts planned by the World Emoji Day, which celebrates the colourful symbols used in instant messages on the 17th of July this year. Again, there's lots of negative stories within the media. Of course there is, that's what generally seems to sell. But think about all the good things that are happening around the world too. It might be silly things like emojis, but these again have an impact and also will steer directions for trends too. So try while you're conducting your own PESTEL analysis to broaden the horizons and also look at more interesting and exciting and happy things at the same time. Again, now let's look at the environmental factors discussed in the past 12 months. Ocean rescue. Fears of plastic pollution washing in on every tie. This is a huge Sky campaign at the moment and something I'm sure lots of people have seen on documentaries. There's been huge islands of plastic washing up in places like Hawaii, where currents bring them together. Coca-Cola bottles to be made from 50% recycled plastic by 2020. Coca-Cola is one of the most established and world-recognisable brands. For them to make such a decision will have a huge impact. And again, consumers want this now. This is something that we all need to take responsibility for. And again, in the fashion industry as well, looking at upcycling and recycling clothes. Supermarkets are urged to introduce plastic-free aisles to help save the ocean. Again, all of this is revolving around plastic and recycling. Obviously, plastic isn't biodegradable, so it's something that we need to reflect on and react to. Finally, what are the legal factors that have been most discussed over the past 12 months? MPs launches bid to outlaw unscrumptious unpaid work trials. Stuart MacDonald has asserted unpaid work trials are in breach of minimum wage definition. This is also happening with things like work experience for students, where they've often been unpaid in the past, which seems to be really unfair, especially when you've heard stories of students working 12 hours plus free of charge, 7 days a week sometimes. So these are new laws coming in to protect us all. UK plans age verification for porn websites from 2018. Websites will be legally required to install age verification controls by April 2018 as part of a move to make the internet safer for children. There's been a huge amount of news stories surrounding the amount of people that are accessing porn websites, and even more importantly, underage people accessing these websites. So to have a law come into action like this will hopefully be really, really positive for the future. And again, will have huge impact on trends. Acid attack punishments assessed in government review. People who carry out acid attacks in England and Wales could face longer jail terms as part of a wide-ranging review following a rise in incidents. There's been a huge amount of stories over the past 12 months of acid attacks in the UK and again worldwide. And to think that these people that are getting away with creating life-changing industries is absolutely barbaric. Let's hope this all does come into law. And again, this will have a huge impact on trends in the future. So how should you present a PESTEL analysis? Let's look at some PESTEL analysis by previous students. Here you can see the students given a nice introduction into what a PESTEL analysis is. They've given a page for each one of the topics and copied and pasted in some news stories that they think are really, really important. You can see they've also nicely highlighted some of the most important parts of those stories as well. It's also nice to keep PESTEL analysis quite visual as well, so adding in imagery is also really nice. You can see here they've gone on to do the economical and social cultural one, again adding a small image to each one and highlighting the most important parts of each topic. Again here with technological and ecological, and again finally with legal. It's nice at the end that this student has also created a conclusion, giving a slight overall analysis of their PESTEL and highlighting some of the key news stories that they think will have an impact on their brand of study and their consumer profile. Another similar one by a student, they've used lots of imagery which is really, really nice, and again highlighted key points within each topic. Again here for economical, social cultural, technological, environmental and legal. Again keeping it all really, really nice and visual. You can go back and re-look at each one of these, pressing pause to read through them in more detail in your own time. So once you've conducted your PESTEL and created it, you should do a SWOT analysis at the end. A PESTEL analysis should feed into a SWOT analysis as it helps to determine the threats and opportunities represented by the macro environment forces that your business or brand usually cannot control, but can obviously prepare for. It is best to filter your PESTEL analysis information down to identify what areas will most impact upon your business or brand and your consumer. Use the information to delve deeper into relevant topics and, most importantly, channel your research into useful predictions. Trend development. If your research is wide, for example, researching lots of different topics for each one of the subjects, you have lots of opportunities to filter and hone your information and, above all, be inspired. If your research is narrow, so maybe only researching 1 or 2, maybe 3 topics per subject, before you know, you've got nowhere to go. There's no inspiration for you to be inspired by, or very limited inspiration. How trends develop. Consider historical events that have impacted people's behaviours, tastes and opinions, for example, the World Wars, the recession more recently, as well as the economic boom. All of these have affected the way people are dressed and had influences upon fashion. PESTEL. Your PESTEL analysis is what is happening right now within society and around us. You need to try to see events around you and how they will be impactful on the future. This will again help you determine trends. We will look more to this in future lessons. PESTEL analysis exercise. Now you should conduct your own PESTEL analysis. Investigate into current news stories and affairs, on the web, in papers, maybe even visiting exhibitions. Record your findings in a visual and written analysis, similar to the work examples that I've shown you. Depending on what you have access to, you could create this in Word, you could create it in InDesign, Illustrator, Photoshop, or if you don't have any access to things like that, you could create it in a collage, cut out paper stories and images and create it like that. Remember, keep your investigation wide so you have lots of information to filter down when we come to translating this information into trend stories. Also remember, a PESTEL analysis is looking at the macro marketing environment. Don't limit yourself to where or what your research is, and make sure that it isn't specific to the fashion industry. Like the topics that we've covered today, it should be looking far beyond the realms of fashion stories. And here is some further reading on the subject.